If you've got lots of workflows that use similar information, it can be challenging to be able to manage that and reduce repeatability. But Kestra allows you to govern that by centrally managing these tasks. Let me show you how that works. You can create a namespace by creating a new workflow and specifying the name here. Anytime you make a new workflow with a new namespace, it will automatically be added to the Namespaces page. But you can also create a new namespace directly inside of the Namespaces page. As you can see here, I'm able to create a new namespace inside of the Namespaces page, and I've decided to call mine company.team. Now I can add a description to it as well as dedicate a specific secret manager and internal storage to it. So if you want your different namespaces to manage the secrets separately, then you can do that too. And if you want them files produced by your workflows to be stored separately, you can do that too with a dedicated internal storage. When I press save, our namespace is now made, and if I go to the Namespaces page, we can see it. And because we use the dot, we actually have two namespaces here. We have our parent namespace company and a child namespace called team. So when we click into that, we get all the options for our namespace. Now you can go in and edit this namespace, such as the description, the worker group, and the allowed namespaces property, but you won't be able to change the name of the namespace. You can actually manage your namespaces from Terraform too. So if you want to be able to create and delete your namespaces, you can do that too using our provided Terraform. Here's a few examples of where you can do that, specifying how you want your namespace to look. For example, what the ID is, what the description is, and vice versa. You can also control things such as the plugin defaults and variables of your namespace using Terraform too. So instead of managing it in the UI, you can also specify exactly what you want it to look like. But here's a variable where we want to specify what it looks like, and we can do that using Terraform. So here's where we create that resource, and we're able to then set it up inside of Kestra. The same applies for secrets too. If you want to be able to automate the process of adding your secrets to Kestra, you can use Terraform to automatically add these as a key value pair that you can access in your workflows. If you head over to the Edit tab of your namespace, you'll notice that there is an Allowed Namespaces option. What this does is it allows other namespaces to access this namespace, such as workflows with things like a subflow or a flow trigger to look at this namespace. Now you can restrict this by saying that this namespace is only restricted to other certain namespaces. Really useful if you want to make sure that the data inside of this namespace isn't able to be accessed from other namespaces due to permissioning. If you've got workflows that rely on secrets, then you can essentially manage the secrets for each of your namespaces from the Namespaces tab. Simply select namespaces and then the namespace of your choice. I'm going to use company.team, and then you can select secrets. And in here, I'm able to add a new secret and manage it directly in one place. This makes it easy for me to be able to see what the secrets are, any tags related to them, and being able to keep those separate from other namespaces to make sure that if I've got different workflows using the same service, but I want them to have different secrets, I can do that too. Here's an example of me adding a secret where I can just put password, and I can just put Kestra123 as my password. If I now make a new workflow inside of this namespace, such as this one, I can actually just change my message here to include that secret using a syntax like so. And I can just put simply password like this and press save. And when I press execute, we'll see that it's going to output that to the logs. However, it's going to mask it because it is actually a secret. So this is super useful if you've got any tasks that rely on passwords or any other API tokens and so on, then you can put those into secrets and manage it centrally from the Namespaces page. Now, let's say you've got an example where you're using the same task type multiple times. In this example here, I'm using Postgres multiple times here to make different queries. Now, this is very useful that I'm able to do this, but it does mean I end up repeating myself quite a lot by having to specify what the database is and the username and password to be able to log into it. But I can use plugin defaults, which I have specified at the bottom of my flow, to make this a little bit easier. But I can take that one step further. Instead of having to specify my plugin defaults for every workflow, I can say that every workflow inside of this namespace that's going to connect to the same database can use the same plugin defaults. So I'm going to simply just copy this. If I simply head over to the Namespaces tab, go over to Teams, I can go to plugin defaults at the top here. I can simply add my plugin defaults here in YAML, just like I did in the editor, directly into the Namespaces tab. So now every workflow inside of company.team will now use this configuration for connecting to my database. This makes it nice and simple for being able to reduce repeatability and also govern it, which means that my password here, for example, could also be using a secret. just like so. So here I'm able to add my secret in to the plugin defaults, which means now I'm able to manage this centrally and govern it without having to repeat myself in every single workflow. This just makes it easy for me to be able to see what secrets are being used and to see any changes in that configuration. And lastly, we have variables. This allows us to be able to set variables at the namespace level, which we can then refer to in all of our workflows. Here's an example of where I've got the database URL here, which I want to use across multiple workflows. Maybe there's an example where I don't want to necessarily use plugin defaults, but I still want to be able to reduce having to repeat this, especially if this URL changes. Addresses and port numbers might change over time, and this allows me to update it all in one place for simplicity. So now if I was to go over to the plugin defaults page, I could actually change this namespace.db URL to now be able to access that variable inside of this configuration. So with both secrets, plugin defaults, and variables, I can now manage all of these things centrally inside of my namespace rather than at the flow level. Hopefully you found this useful and you're going to start managing your tasks centrally from the namespace level. Let us know how you're going to use this in the comments below.